Motion to accept the 23rd minutes.
I motion to accept it, and yuck on the broccoli.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're both accepted. So I think we can turn the floor over to our colleagues in you prefer Spectrum or Charter Communications?
Honestly, whatever.
Either one.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because somebody asked me about that once, and I think initially it was a little confusing, but it's almost like Procter and Gamble owns Dawn dish soap, or it's just like, so Spectrum is the brand of services that we offer, but Charter is the name of the parent company that owns like that's the company, and then the services are under the brand of Spectrum. So, but however you want to do it, so we're fine either way.
I'm just curious. Well, I'm going to turn the floor over to either you or Steve.
Yeah, sure. I'll get started. So thank you for having me. My name is Melinda Kinney, and I'm head up the government affairs team, actually for the New England area for Charter Spectrum. And I'm actually based here in Maine, and have been for about 25 years. So I previously was with Time Warner Cable, and then came over when the Charter acquisition happened in 2016. And so, yeah, so we've got some, long-term, members on my team that have been, in Maine for quite some time as well. And then Steve, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself too, and then we'll kick off our presentation.
Okay.
Oh, you're still on mute.
Steve Holmes. I'm with Spectrum Community Solutions. I work for the division that handles bulk services throughout the state. And I've been with the company for about 6 years. I've been in this position for about 1.5 years, and glad to be here.
And I had broccoli for lunch, so anyway.
Leave my broccoli alone.
So is it okay for me, Ray, to share my screen?
Certainly.
Does that work? Okay. All right, I'll do that. Great. All right, let me find you guys. Okay, so everybody can see that. So basically what the presentation, I'm going to walk you through just a little bit about Charter from a national perspective, bring it down to Maine and what our services are, and what, where we serve in Maine, and then talk a little bit about the town of Perry. And then really just, talk about some of our broadband affordability programs, and just kind of an overview. And then Steve's going to talk about the bulk program. And so we can do, questions as we go along, or if you want to save them for the end, that's fine too. However you guys want to roll.
Okay.
So we'll just go ahead and get started. So let's say, so nationally, so Spectrum, or Charter Spectrum, provides services in 41 different states, and we have 32 million customers nationwide. We have over 800,000 miles of infrastructure that we manage, and have invested over $40 billion in our technology and our infrastructure. And we've got actually some really exciting plans for our customers in Maine that I'll tell you about in a little bit. And we're actually going to be doing a big announcement with the governor's office at the end of the month around that. In Maine, we provide services to 295 communities. We have over 466,000 customers, and we actually have 753 employees based right here in Maine. You can see what the company pays in taxes just in the state, as well as the capital investment that was made in 2022. So as you can see, the company absolutely invests in its infrastructure services, and is really trying to expand services. And we actually last year expanded our services to over 10,000 homes and businesses across the state. We actually we built 3 new communities in Swanville, Etna, and Newburgh. And so those folks never had our services before, and actually just lit them up last year, which was really exciting. And this is just kind of
quick question. Can I assume that all the black on the state of Maine is areas that you serve?
Yeah, and here's a bigger version for you right here.
Gotcha.
So it's actually a little bit flipped. So the blue areas are where we do serve.
Okay.
And then, and this, actually, and we are in the process of acquiring, V-Line cable, the V-Line cable system in the Skowhegan area, in Millinocket, and that, this map reflects that as well. So that we're in the process of acquiring that system. So here's our services in Perry. So what I did was I pulled, we have 200, what our network shows that we have 268 locations, whether they're homes or businesses that have access to Spectrum services. Currently, all of our residential service offerings are, we have the top speed right now is a gig by 30 megabits per second. And we're actually, and I had alluded to this a little bit a couple of seconds ago, about we are going to be doing some network enhancements for all of our existing customers. And by the end of 2025, we're actually going to be launching symmetrical services across the board. So our base symmetrical service will be 300 by 300 up to gig symmetrical. And then I'm even hearing that it could be as high as 5 gigs. So it's going to be continuing to grow. And we're launching DOCSIS 4.0, which is a new platform that will help enhance this transition. So, you know, we do a lot with communities, and we've worked a lot with, especially since COVID, and that, you know, with ARPA funding that went to a lot of the communities. We've partnered, I think, about 16 to 18 different communities utilizing their ARPA funds to do network or line extensions. And we also have really recently applied for the Maine Connectivity Authority's Reach Me program, which is a line extension program as well. So that's for in our existing footprint, so that we can get to the remaining unserved areas that the company, you know, usually we would expand our services if it's like 15 homes per mile. But it doesn't have to necessarily be 15, but it has to like kind of equate to that 15 homes per mile kind of formula that we would do it on our own dime. But so there are areas that are harder to get to, more expensive to reach, and sometimes need some you know, additional funding to help get to that point. So I don't know, you know, in your perspective, if this looks pretty accurate, but if you do have like areas that are unserved that you'd like us to take a look at, we're absolutely happy to kind of sit down with you and pull together cost estimates for those areas and see what that universe looks like. So I'll stop there and see if you guys have questions.
Yeah, our vision as a committee, at least, we haven't gone through the select board or anything like that, because we're still in the discovery phase of what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
But what we want to do is we want to make basically fiber available to every home in the entire community. So when I look at the map and I see the blue there, I say, that's wonderful. I live in the red, so I don't have any service at all. And it looks like there's probably more unserved mileage in Perry than there is served.
Yeah.
I think this probably is going to have some consequence on your thinking. Or not.
Well, how many, well, so I mean, I was curious, like how many, do you know how many homes are in the town of Perry total?
I think the households from the 2020 census are about what, 300, Elaine?
I believe 347 households. That
Okay.
does not include businesses, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the housing units is what, about 500 something?
No, housing units is, hold on, I can get that to you. I just have a quick question. Will Spectrum be installing fiber in all of their footprint, or does Spectrum expect, or are they waiting for DOCSIS 4 to be able to provide a symmetrical connection?
So a couple things. So I'll unpack that a little bit in a couple different ways. So our existing network is a hybrid fiber network. It's a fiber backbone, and essentially it's a coax drop from the pole to the home. And the technology that we're basically, that infrastructure today is scalable, and with the use of DOCSIS, with DOCSIS 4.0 and this new technology, what we call high splits, we are going to be able to deliver symmetrical services on that existing network. It has, you know, an upgrade, if you will, or an enhancement that's going to be made to it, but that will absolutely be able to transition to these symmetrical services, you know, from now into the future. Then all of our new extensions are fiber to the home, right? So anything new that we build in the town of Perry would be a fiber to the home build. So, but all of the services will be the same across the board. So the people who are existing in an existing footprint are going to get the same services, and the same symmetrical services as a fiber to the home customer would. Does that help?
It does. So, in answer to the previous question, I just went to remind myself. So, Perry has a population of 802,
Okay.
and let me see, 314 households, and that's households only. Total housing units is 527.
So would that mean like apartments or multi-units?
Yes,
Okay.
or seasonal.
Or seasonal, okay. How big is the seasonal population? Is it pretty significant or not, or like low?
I
Define significant.
You know, like for instance, I don't know, like you know, like Old Orchard Beach is like really like super seasonal, or like
Right.
Wells is pretty seasonal, but like some communities, like I'm trying to think, I don't know. Oh, like I guess like, you know, like Camden, I mean, there's more, I don't know, they're so, like it's a little bit 50-50 or maybe even a little bit less than that probably, but anyway,
I'd
I
say
just didn't
less
know
than that.
if it's like 20% or something like that is like a seasonal population. About
That
that.
may be close.
Yeah, okay, just curious, but yeah, but still, that still impacts a lot when you're looking at broadband and you know, people extending their stays. And although with our sludge situation right now, I don't know if anybody wants to deal with that, so it's a whole nother story. But anyway, so yeah, so I mean, if you guys do have a list of the roads or the areas or the roads or addresses that don't have service by any chance? Or I don't know how much, you know, legwork you guys have done in that space yet. Or,
I don't have the answer to that.
okay. Because sometimes what we can do too is pull a list of addresses that we do serve. And then if you had like a list, like an E911 list or something of addresses in an Excel doc, we could kind of cross-reference that to figure out, to map out like where the unserved locations might be. And the other thing too is everybody had mapping data that was due to the FCC yesterday. So that should be more granular, and we should be able to get a better sense of who's served and who's not served. So it's becoming easier to identify those pockets in those areas. But
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if any of the Reach Me grant applications were for Perry, Eastport, or Pleasant Point.
I would have to go back and look at what we submitted, but and I don't know what other providers submitted either. But
Yeah.
I will I know we've talked with Eastport quite a bit in
Yeah.
the past, and then I'm sorry, what was the other one, Passamaquoddy?
Yeah,
Yes,
Pleasant
yeah.
Point.
Yeah,
Oh,
Pleasant Point
Pleasant
has.
Point. Yeah, we did
Yep.
serve, yeah, Pleasant Point. Okay. I'll see if I can take a look. I don't think it rings a bell for the ones that we did, but I'm not 100% sure. I gotta look. And then I don't know what other providers put in yet, and they
Okay.
should be making some determinations on the Reach Me. I do know this for the Reach Me program, that they had $20 million allocated and they got $60 million in requests. So there's a little bit of a difference there. So they're gonna have to, you know, probably make some hard decisions, I think. So
I bet. Yeah. Well, thank you for answering that.
yeah, so I'll take a look too, and hopefully maybe I can pull it up even during this call.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then, so because I know you guys have worked with the Eastport and Pleasant Point, right? Like on some collaborative efforts too for broadband recently.
Yeah, it's certainly under active discussion.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And then just kind of moving to this slide really just talks about Charter, we've really worked hard to partner with municipalities and communities. And, I think we've found a lot of success, as I mentioned a little while ago, in partnering with them, using some of these ARPA funds to get to these unserved areas and build out the rest of the towns. So, again, we've got, some significant enhancements coming to our existing network, and then as well as, doing these new fiber to the home builds for our new build areas. And then I think the other part of the equation that's really important to focus on is broadband accessibility. A lot of times, it's funny because people who don't have broadband, or the adoption piece is huge, and there are sometimes, obviously financial barriers to that, and sometimes it's hard to even believe that people don't realize the need or how important broadband is. So we do participate in the FCC's ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, and we actually have a product that's about $30 a month. It's 100 by 10 megabit per second package that will qualify. But if people qualify for the ACP program, they can apply that $30 credit to any services that we offer. But also we have Spectrum Internet Assist, which we've had for quite a few years now, and it's essentially $20 a month. It's for families who have kids on the National School Lunch Program, or seniors who receive the Supplemental Security Income, the SSI benefit. So if they qualify, they get it's a 30 megabit per second package, a free modem, no contracts, and then there's a Wi-Fi router for $5 that they can apply for, or get with the service. But and the only caveat is that they can't be an existing customer, but if they haven't been a customer for the last 30 days and they're eligible, they could participate in this program to get basically, a reasonably priced internet. And then I'm going to turn over to Steve to talk about the bulk program and what that's all about. It's a new creative opportunity that the company's recently launched.
Appreciate it, Melinda. As she mentioned, it's fairly new. So last year we rolled it out, and it's as far as to municipalities, we've been doing bulk in the state for many years, going back into Time Warner days and so forth. But expanding into municipalities and so forth, it's fairly new. As the name states, it's bulk. So best way I can probably explain that, think of it as the Sam's Club of telecom when it comes to internet and or video services. So you deal with one billable entity. In this case, it'd be the municipality itself. We would actually ride out the entire town, come up with our costing to extend services across all addresses. Come back and we basically bring that into a return on investment model and come up with a price per residential property for the, in this case, you're probably looking at gigabit services to all the residences. And we would present that. It's a contracted service over it can be up to 5 years, 7 years, depending upon what the return on investment comes back at. And that's billable again to the municipality, and that could be recouped. We've seen either through the tax base or the municipality billing individually. We actually have a billing company that we partner with. It's not part of us, but we certainly can provide that info to them, and they can work out a deal to bill all the residents individually. There's some benefits as well that they offer as well on that. But that's pretty much it. The gigabit service, like I said, would be installed to each residence. It includes the modem, the gigabit modem, router, and Wi-Fi, all included. Pricing's coming back, looking at about $37 roughly. That's what we've seen across the footprint. Again, that's give or take, depending upon what the return on investment provides. But that's pretty much it. Yeah. Any questions?
What do you get for the $37 a month?
The gigabit internet to the home. Each person would have that, and that includes the modem, router, and Wi-Fi.
And Steve, once the high split came around, right, they would be able to transition to the,
That would be available to them to upgrade. Yes, it would be available.
got it.
I say to upgrade, it depends. This is fairly new. This
It's very
news is
new.
rolling out now.
Yeah.
So I need to find out how that's going to be played in existing proposals. It may be available out of the gate to the municipality that we propose that, in the next 2 years, once it's upgraded, that can be available to all passings, all residential properties, that it would be automatically upgraded. I need to get a little more information on that, but that's a possibility.
So what happens if some people in the community don't want the service? Is Perry still responsible for paying it?
It is, unfortunately, it is a bulk proposal. I mean, as I think it's on here, it's roughly $135 retail value. So if you're coming in about $37 per, we take into account a lot of things. We're not doing the billing to each and every entity, to each and every residence. So that's obviously some savings. The ability to bulk an entire town, that's all taken into account, which is how we're able to offer it at such a low price, $37 roughly. So yes, unfortunately, you may have some that don't want it. That's one of the I guess points to or considerations to keep.
Okay. It seems to me that your company also owns the infrastructure. Is that correct?
Yes.
We do. We don't ride on anyone else's. We own it end to end. Correct.
Okay.
And we do that for a couple of primary reasons. One of them is to make sure for security purposes, right? And making sure that the network is secured from all different levels, and we can monitor it, and also from hackers and all, there's a lot of cybersecurity concerns that we have as a company. And the other, which plays into that as well, is quality of service, and making sure that we own and manage the network 100% 24/7, and so that way we can ensure that our services are the best that they can be, and if customers have issues, that we can have we can diagnose those very quickly.
So since you own it, what would happen if somebody else wanted to go to a different ISP?
They would just cancel services with us and go to another provider that is available in your community. Whether, I don't know if Consolidated provides services in Perry, or if it's I don't know,
Yes,
Pioneer.
yes, they do.
Yeah, so people have it's a competitor, but they it's a choice that folks have.
We don't prevent anyone from doing any other providers. We're just this is us. This is our network that we provide, and no one else rides on it. So they're free to do what they like.
Okay, you just answered my other question. Thank you.
Sure.
Guys, we got any other questions?
Yeah, I think, and then I was just going to provide, this is our current level of services right now, but as I mentioned, these are kind of like these are just for residential offerings. We do offer direct fiber connections to businesses today, and if businesses would like multi-gigabit symmetrical connections, we can provision any level of service to a business, actually even today in town. So that the businesses are treated very differently, and a lot of times the build out, or the network build costs are absorbed into kind of the contract that they do from a business perspective. But these are just our standard offering prices that don't reflect bundled services, whether it's our video service, our mobile phone, or broadband, or the TV service, the video cable. So we offer 4 products. Mm-hmm.
Are businesses available at the same rate as the residential, the $37?
Oh, for the bulk?
Yeah,
It's strictly residential for the
Strictly?
bulk program. Yeah. Well, one other point that I wanted to bring up was, and I apologize for that, Linda, I just remembered. As far as any build out costs, as I mentioned on the bulk program, if we do any ride outs and so forth, walkouts to assess what construction costs are going to be to provide services to all the unserved and so forth. That cost can be extremely significant. I'm sure you can imagine. All those costs are absorbed into our models. So when we offer, it all comes back, and we're able to offer $37 per tenant. It's all inclusive. So there would be no money out of pocket in addition to the contracted service for, we'll say $37. So I just want to make that clear, which can be when you talk about a lot of money for extensive build out.
right.
And then I think that was it really for just questions. I'm trying to think anything else that we might have missed, or like if anything else to touch upon.
Yeah. Now you mentioned new homes that would obviously have to be factored into your models and your estimates. Would they be grandfathered in?
Is that for the bulk program, you mean?
Yeah,
Oh, yes. How is that handled for like new construction or new homes that are built in the community?
New homes that are built, we can certainly add to our bulk model. Yes, we can do that, and they would be at the same price. Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Are there any assurances that you give to your customers that that the rates aren't going to go up? Or...
Well, it's contracted. I mean, whatever we come up with for a price for the term, it's contracted. That's what it's going to be.
So, so if you do a 5-year contract, it'll be a fixed rate for 5 years then?
Well, again, we need to pull everything together. Sometimes we have annual increases, nominal. It might be a 5% annual increase. Again, we need to look at everything, see what it comes back at. But we're not going up like, if you order Spectrum services today, normally after a year it goes up a fair amount. We're not looking at that. So.
Okay. Tina, John, do you have any questions?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is John. I just was curious as how do you decide the customers that you presently have, Spectrum has in Perry? How did you decide and determine that those individuals would be Spectrum customers versus the other surrounding areas?
So generally, I mean, generally like it's really kind of based on density, right? Like whether it's like like I was saying, because we have a franchise agreement with the town of Perry to provide our video cable services. And that's really how like the cable industry got started, was really with a video product. And it's treated differently from a policy perspective and governed by federal law. So these franchise agreements that we have are only cover this like video service, but it's kind of like it has served in the past as like the basis for how cable networks or cable companies have expanded their footprints. And so generally, it used to be like 35 homes per mile, 20, and it's gone down. And I think a lot of that is attributed to, adding more services that you're able to offer over that, almost over that same connection point. But it's generally, it's generally around, like I said, 15 homes per mile is how we have based, build out in the past. But sometimes it's different. Like sometimes we have a very, very aggressive serviceability program. So if there are like up to 3 homes in Perry today that call in, even one home, like that calls in and says, hey, I want service, I don't have it, Charter will put $6,000 towards the cost of that to acquire or to build to that new home. And so, and if whatever the delta is, you know, sometimes it's all, you know, under 6,000, but sometimes if it's over, then the customer would need to pay for like that difference. But that's under like our current construct today. And you know, we can, like I said, we'll do up to 3 homes at $6,000 per home for like a particular extension.
Well, I'm pretty sure that there are quite a few areas in Perry where there aren't very many homes. So that's going to be a challenge for whoever we partner with.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'd be curious to figure out like what that looks like. And I can, if you want, I can certainly go back to our mapping team and see what they can pull together. Sometimes they can even do kind of a high level desktop analysis of like what that unserved area looks like and what the estimated cost would be. But that's something. And then, oh, I know, but the other thing I was going to mention is it would be service and repair. I think one thing that our company really does a great job at is, you know, if we have storms or significant outages, we have a great group, I'm sorry, it's like the end of the day, I'm kind of like brain dead, but we have a really strong workforce and can repair and get services back up and running. We've got, you know, fleets of trucks and employees. And if we need extra employees, we can certainly draw from resources from other states that the company serves. Like, so sometimes if we have a really, you know, significant hurricane, like we had with, I think it was a Hurricane Irene, we had like fiber, you know, the backhoes took out, you know, fiber lines, and it was insanity. But we brought in crews from New York to help us out. But, you know, our downtime is very low, and you know, we were able to get restoration up and running really quickly. And so I think that's one, you know, I think assurance and great benefit with, you know, with the services that Charter brings, because we've got the resources to support our services.
Melinda, if I can kind of follow on to John's question, and I think Ray was touching on it also. I think the concern in a lot of the rural areas, if the ROI wasn't there already to build out to these really kind of non-dense areas, if you're already being essentially paid for everybody, what would be the incentive, you know, for Spectrum to do it now if it wasn't there as a profit motive before?
I'm still not sure I understand the question. So, I mean, so essentially, I mean, if we're looking at these unserved areas in the town, and, you know, Charter would contribute a certain amount of money to build out to those areas, right? And so it's, you know, we would absolutely have a financial investment in that. But sometimes to meet that threshold, and again, I can't tell you off the top of my head because I don't know what would be needed to extend services to the remaining unserved areas and what equipment, you know, whether it's, you know, how many nodes, amplifiers, and, you know, things like that, or how much fiber is needed. But we would do that calculation, make that determination, and then take on the risk, right? We would take on because we're not telling, if we built out to the entire, so it was like, you know, $2 million, and then Spectrum puts in $1 million or something, and there's a, you know, we get, you know, additional funding to make the build viable. I mean, Spectrum owns the responsibility, the risk of maintaining, upgrading, servicing those customers, you know, for the life, for, you know, for as long as the company's in business, I guess, you know. So I mean, like we don't require like how much, you know, like a certain amount of customers to sign up. Like, we're taking that risk that if we build out the rest of the town and we only get one customer, that's on us. So I think that, you know, I think the incentive is to try to get as many customers as we can to, you know, to take the services, you know, because it's a competitive market. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a competitive market.
And I'm sure I'm probably phrasing this poorly, but essentially the way you presented the bulk purchase, if new homes would be grandfathered in if they were built to, the cost is entirely on the Spectrum Charter side to build it out, and you would essentially generate no new net revenue because you've already have a bulk purchase. So I think a lot of people are wondering, well, if they weren't willing to build us before when it would have made money, why would they build to these areas now?
Because, well, and Steve, that's to you, because I mean, it's a guarantee, right? I mean, it's for the company, it's like a guarantee revenue source. So we do these bulk deals with condo associations all the time. And so like the company is able to factor in like, okay, well, we're gonna get a certain amount of revenue from, X, Y, however many customers. So it's able to take that risk and continue, I don't know, it's able to take that risk. So I don't know, Steve, if you have other.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, a bulk commitment affords, you're able to do a lot of things. You can build out and provide services to unserved areas that you didn't have before. We didn't have this program for municipalities in the past, so we do now.
Right. And
So,
so
all right. So if I were to use that analogy that you provided, if you had a bulk agreement with an apartment building and the apartment building owner built another building next door, you would give them service for that new building that you now have to build infrastructure into.
We can do amendments. Yes, we can do amendments to the contract. We can, and on most times they come in at the same price. Obviously, if it's right next door, we have plant right there. As long as the network infrastructure can support that additional one, yes.
I'll take your word for it. It's an interesting business model.
and I just want to clarify, just so you guys are, just to sharpen that, the bulk program is one option, but what I've been talking about is just like a build out, and whether it's like one person, 5 people, whatever, like it's different. It's just like a straight build out opportunity. But we could layer, there's this bulk avenue that the town could go down if they would like to, if they feel like that's a good, viable option. So I think I just want to make sure that you guys understand that they're kind of 2 separate conversations or options for you.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the plan B that you just mentioned there?
The build out?
Yeah, the build out model.
Yeah, so I mean, so that was what I was saying before, like, we're happy to take a look at the unserved areas and what that costing looks like, how much charter would put in to build out the rest of the town. But that's what I was saying, like, the town, it could be one person, that we don't have like a certain metric that we make that, or contract that we ask the town to like have so many customers. But like, if we do partner with the town and do a build out project, it's really just simply like a line extension project to get to the rest of the unserved areas of town.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sometimes I'm slow.
It's confusing because I was just sitting here thinking like, because Steve and I live in this space all the time, and a lot of times I think we take it for granted that we're being clear, and I don't think sometimes we are, because we're just so used to it. So I just wanted to make sure that that you guys have some different options, whether you want to do a bulk, and if you do a bulk deal, you get a build out basically at no cost to the town, and then you get a cheap gig service rate for everybody, like everybody gets it. And then if you go with a build out, there's going to be generally like, charter will put in some money, we'll need some additional funds, whether it's connectivity funds from the line extension program or the BEAD money that's coming online later on this summer. And like that but then it's just a build out, and whoever comes into town and wants to take services, or, whatever home wants to take services can, and if they don't want to, they don't have to. So, but everybody would have access to the services.
Right. So since you're going to own the whole system, would you be taking the responsibility for preparing grants going to kind of MCA?
Yeah, we would definitely take the lead on that, but would want to work with the town and, get kind of any local information that would be helpful. But yeah, absolutely. We would take the lead on the application process.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And hopefully they'll get more money, because I feel like, Perry would be a great town for the line extension program, and I'm really hopeful that I think that they will be, but I haven't heard yet. I think they're still trying to, slog their way through the first round of applications. But I think that would be a great Reach Me program to extend services to the rest of the town.
Right. I just wish they had more money in this round.
I do too. I think, I wish, and maybe they will like reallocate some of funds, because they have funds for other, they're getting more money from this BEAD, another bucket of federal funds coming down the pike. So and I know that they're gonna be doing some more grant rounds, I think in August is what I understand.
Right.
But I don't know about the Reach Me, but they definitely, I think I mean, as soon as I know, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, don't be surprised if we send some emails your way, because there may be some other questions we come up with.
Absolutely. No, that'd be great. And again, like to the extent that you guys have, you know, information or even like a E911 address list, that would be helpful for us to kind of take a look at and see if we can use that to identify the remaining unserved areas.
So I just had a quick question,
Yeah.
and maybe you guys already answered it, but so the bulk rate is for every household in Perry. So that means every household in Perry would have access to fiber if that were the decision? Every household?
This, what we're offering here is a gig, and it'd be a coax into the house for every household. And again, it ties back to a fiber network. So.
Okay.
And then that network is going to be enhanced and like upgraded, if you will, and being able to offer within, and everybody in our footprint by the end of 2025 will have access to gig symmetrical, all symmetrical services. Even today, like, so the 200 and what was it, 68 homes that or locations that have access to our services in the town today are within 24 months will have access to symmetrical services up to gig symmetrical.
Okay.
And that's on Charter's dime. Like we're not asking for additional funds or anything. The company's just doing this on, you know, this enhancement on its own
Right.
as part of its business plan.
Okay.
I'm just curious, does Spectrum have fiber here now for its 268 customers?
We do. Yeah, we have an
Good.
entire, our whole backbone is fiber. So like along the, you know, along the main roads, if you will, and it's just a coax drop from the pole to the house essentially.
Right. So all of those roads that were in blue in your map already have the fiber, right?
There's a fiber component, yes, to our entire infrastructure. Mhm.
All right. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ray.
I'm sorry, I'm just asking if we had any other questions.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say one thing. I mean, with respect to, I know everybody, and again, like fiber to the home is great. It's, you know, you can go like longer distances. We're doing fiber to the home, but you know, our existing network is and is going to be, we're going to be, you know, showing everybody that it is scalable. So I think just being more technology neutral and, you know, is I think a good place to be, because it's like sometimes you just don't, I mean, listen, I'm not an engineer. So sometimes you just don't realize what technology is going to be available and what, you know, what things are going to be coming down the road that are going to be able to, you know, enhance the services and what's available. So I think it's great. You guys sound like you're really open to kind of just at the end of, you want the end result, right? Like it's almost like not necessarily what it takes to get there, but you want to have the services available for folks.
Right. I mean, from my point of view, it's got to be good for the customer and it's got to be good for the town.
I agree.
Anything else? Well, I want to thank you both for a nice presentation, and we'll probably, like I said, be communicating some questions back to you as we talk about it amongst ourselves and we get information from other potential partners. It's going to be a process for us. I mean, we got in the game late and we're running as hard as we can.
Well, listen, I mean, I think, you know, you're in a good space for a couple reasons. I think, you know, there's kind of a lull in the funding right now. And so which gives you guys some time. And, you know, to the extent that Steve and I can be helpful, like I said, I'm happy to kind of dig in and see what we can figure out for like what it would take to serve the rest of the community. And so, you know, just, you know, keep me posted. And, you know, like I said, if you want me to go down that road, I'm happy to take a look at that.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you,
thanks for
Melinda.
inviting us.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Melinda.
All right, you're
Yep.
welcome.
No
All
problem.
right. Keep in
Thank you,
touch.
guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Later.
Okay.
Elaine, tech neutral is meaning that if somebody doesn't care what type of network it is, as long as you're getting the service that you want or the speeds that you want, but not, having a preference, whether it's fiber or coax or anything else.
Oh, gotcha. All right, guys, here's your opportunity to talk about it.
Well, this is John. One of my concerns with DBU was utilizing Pioneer Wireless was the ability to respond to any type of catastrophe. And I know that Spectrum or the bigger ISPs have the capability to reach out across the states and import those workers. That was good to hear, but as Chris said, I don't understand their business model for the bulk program. Again, the tech neutral, that really perked my ears, because again, they keep saying coax cable. So are they just utilizing cable technology and just doubling the cable and switching the data flow between cables? It's not fiber optic.
Yeah, so if you guys want just a real quick down and dirty on what they're talking about. So on the existing coax plant, if they don't build anything else, if it stays exactly as it is, what cable companies are doing is there's two technologies that they want to launch. One is DOCSIS 4.0, which is just the latest set of standards. DOCSIS is the operating sort of parameters that a cable modem has to operate in. So they're upgrading that, which is kind of the software behind it all. And that will give them the ability to offer higher speeds. The symmetrical, when we're talking about upload and download, that is a problem inherent to a coax network. There's no real solution. What they're proposing to do is increase the amount of space that can be utilized for the upload, which would theoretically give them more speed. To do that, they have to go out and physically replace the circuit board in every single active on that coax plant. When you're driving down the road and you're looking at the cable lines, everywhere you see a silver box or a gray box, that's an amplifier. They have to replace every single one of them. I'm not entirely sure that, especially in a bulk purchase model, or even just in the rural area like we are, that they're going to spend that money to do it. I don't think there's enough return on investment. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the cable companies have changed their paradigms, but it's expensive to do it, and they won't get a lot of money back. So that generally doesn't bode well for the consumer.
I can also say too, they made the same offer to Jonesport, and about 2 weeks later, they backed down and said, "Oops, we can't do that."
And
Did they
I've
say-
yet to see.
Did they say why?
No.
Okay.
And if you try to pin, and again, this is not an anti-spectrum thing at all. This is the incumbent cable providers that have coax networks. I just understand the economics of it. So it's not about spectrum, but I have yet to see any of the incumbent providers, when they say we will by 2025 is the example in this case, on their own slide deck. If you ask them to tie that to the contract, they will refuse, unless I'm, again, just completely wrong. If you can get them to agree to those upgrades by 2025, more power to you, but I haven't seen it happen yet.
Technical question for you, Chris. I know that fiber is so much better in terms of maintaining signal strength and fidelity and all that. But how much do you lose if they've already got fiber backbones and then they add some hundreds of feet to a person's home? Does that crap out the signal that badly?
Well, the problem with when you say a fiber backbone, it is true. It is a fiber. Unless you get rid of all of the coax in between.
Uh-huh.
If your home has coax anywhere in between it and the fiber, that's where the problems ride. So unless they're going to extend their fiber network, which is not what they're proposing, then you're always going to have those problems, whether it's network congestion, the reliability issues, power outages, all those things. Is that what you mean? Am I answering that
Yeah.
correctly?
I mean, in my naive thinking, the first thing you got to do is you have some sort of transducer that gets it from light to electrons, right?
Yeah, out on the telephone poles, they have fiber and it comes into what's called a node, which is it's essentially exactly what you're saying. It's a transceiver. It takes an optical signal, converts it to an RF signal, does the same thing in reverse to send it back to the head ends.
Gotcha.
And to her point too, I don't speak for anybody, but across rural areas in Maine, I think if a cable provider came to them and said, "Hey, we can provide you the level of service you're looking for and everything," I think she's right. I think there are a lot of technology agnostic people. They don't necessarily care. The problem is not the platform. The problem has been the quality of service that cable customers have seen. If they could maintain these networks to a level of service that rivaled a fiber network, I'd be in favor of it, because the amount of money it would take to get people access to a quality, reliable broadband would be so much smaller. And that means more people can get it. So I would be a fan. I haven't seen an example of that problem being solved yet. And I tried to do it myself for 20 years. It's a very hard problem to solve.
Chris, when you talk about the quality of service, the degradation of the quality of service, are we talking reliability? Are we talking bandwidth being decreased?
Yeah, it's kind of all the above. The biggest thing that people have seen is you transition from a TV signal, which is what coax was designed for,
Right.
and you entered into the data world. Especially when you're talking two-way communications, it's just a really, really hard engineering problem to make data travel back upwards on a coax network. It's the architecture, the way it's designed, the path going back out is just where all of electrical noise is, where all of the junk in a signal is. So it's just prone to problems. And that's why you generally will be fine on your end, but the person at the other end of the telephone or the other end of the gaming system, or where you're trying to upload folders to and things like that, that's where all the problems lie, in the data world. And you would never see those things in a TV signal. You'd never know it, because it's just coming to you.
Right.
So the mid splits and the high split technologies are very interesting, and I think in dense metropolitan areas where it makes sense to go out and do that, I think that they're absolutely going to do it, because it's way cheaper than upgrading to fiber. But when you only have maybe 3 customers, at one of those roads that you're talking about in Perry, you're going to build 2 miles of something, or you're going to try to change out some amplifiers. I just don't. You're talking 30, 40, 50, 60, $100,000 to get those 3 customers. How long does it take you to make that back at $40 a month?
I feel like Tina may have had a question or a comment. No?
It was kind of off script. I'm just looking at Glenn. Sorry, Glenn, I don't know who you are, but for the minutes, I just need to know who Glenn is.
All right, fine. Ray, you know who Glenn is. Go ahead, Dan.
Hmm. It's an alias, huh?
Just use my middle name, that's all.
Hey,
Thank you.
Hey.
I know Melinda quite well, and I've worked with her for years, or worked in some adversarial components, and I just felt it better that my name was not there, so I just went with my middle name.
well, my eagle eye spied it, and I wanted to make sure my minutes were right.
So, I'm just going to, I told Ray earlier that Dan Sullivan would be attending today. And Dan presented on behalf of DBU, and Ray and both John have watched. So, Dan Sullivan is also a technical advisor for Sunrise County Economic Council. And Dan and John have both watched, and Chris too, have both watched Dan stay completely neutral. But Dan and Chris and I work together all the time, so it doesn't hurt to have Dan just listen in. And Ray felt like that was okay, so I just felt like that, I stayed out of it because Spectrum is used to me, and and so Dan also. So anyway,
Glenn, the,
I got to get used to that, I guess.
yeah, that's probably what's going to stick with you now, with my mind.
Thanks.
That, like I said, I was mentioning how Spectrum can outreach to other companies to provide any type of catastrophe type assistance. Can Pioneer Wireless do the same thing? Do they have the contacts outside the states? I know, like Eastern Maine Electric and other utilities, they can reach. You know, they have an outreach program. Does Pioneer Wireless also have that capability?
These smaller companies obviously don't, they can't work on the same level as companies as big as Consolidated or Spectrum. But one thing, and Chris alluded to this to some point, and I think it should be considered, is a complete fiber network has far less maintenance costs. There's far less electrical components in there that can go down if power goes out. There are a lot less times when a system is down. And if you have a catastrophe where somebody hits a telephone pole and knocks it down, many times that fiber cable is intact. It just lays on the ground until they put a new pole up. So to answer your questions, no, companies like Pioneer and other small ones in the state of Maine don't have the outreach that these bigger companies have. But in a true fiber network, front to back, we have far less maintenance.
Yeah, that I mean, listening to you guys talk, I know just the weight of fiber optic versus a copper cable, that's considerable. And essentially without the amplifiers and less moving parts. Yeah, I understand that the ongoing maintenance program, there's less, less capability. My question was more, well, we're concerned about if we get the ice storm in 98 again, what's going to happen. But I think everybody's going to be in the same situation. But thanks.
I can tell you, and on the DBU side, we've had issues where somebody hit a telephone pole, and knocked it down. And Pioneer has, as soon as that they were aware of it, they dispatch a crew. So it may take them a couple hours to get here from Holton or from wherever their crew is coming from. They are building a bigger presence down east as far as crews. So I think some of that repair issue stuff will get better if we need to get a crew. I will say during the pandemic, the DBU network was rock solid. It did what it needed to do when Spectrum was down for many days at a time. So there was an issue with that copper weight hanging on those poles.
And John, I can kind of touch on this. The idea of a big company and their sort of fleets and stuff, it sounds awesome, except when you look at it logistically on a map. If you're sort of maintaining that fleet of maintenance guys, well, they still only have 2 trucks assigned to this area. So if there's something going on so bad that they need to bring folks out of state, they're still only going to assign so many resources to somewhere remote like this. They're going to go to the most populous areas. You go by number of customers out is how you solve major outages. Where's the biggest bang for the buck? Where can I put one generator, get the most people up? Which one pole, which one cut? What can I do to restore the most services? You guys are kind of end of line. That's the reality of geography. So they're still only going to prioritize bringing trucks to this area along those lines. What I think is going to happen, and this is not a pro Pioneer DBU or anything, but the pure market forces, the beauty of having other company, because remember, Spectrum can only use Spectrum employees or a Spectrum preferred contractor. They don't work with just anybody. It takes a lot, and you have to be a pretty big company to be a contractor for Spectrum. So that's why they bring them in from Canada or from New Hampshire or way out of state, because there's not enough big guys in Maine. But what Pioneer can do is call a guy like me, a guy like any other 10 guys I know that have bucket trucks, and they can hire them to go right to where the areas are. So you're just bringing in different resources. It's not that they have more, they just have their own. And you're going to have independent contractors, which, not to do the stump thing or whatever, in the spirit of Maine, I'd rather see that than a bunch of crews coming in from Massachusetts or whatever. You know what I mean? That's our money paying for that stuff. Let's keep it here. Let's provide workforce, development and all those things. But that being said, the smaller companies, the private networks, the DBUs, the utilities have the flexibility to hire whoever's available. And you're going to see an awful lot of people roll into these places when there's money to be made like that.
Yeah, that was good. You put my concerns to rest. I really appreciate both Dan and you, Chris. Thank you.
Hey, Elaine, did you change my name? I was getting used to Glenn.
Really, Dan? Really?
I'm going to have to hop off, guys. The one thing that I will say, because again, I kind of am platform agnostic when it comes to solving these problems. I just happen to feel that in most cases, the path that's being discussed the most is probably the best. But I will say this, and this is true whether it's Spectrum or anybody else, the bulk purchases are, for the ones that I've seen, and I've seen a few, and I'm currently working on some, are almost always a terrible idea. I have yet to see where it makes any sense. I've yet to see where it's benefited the community. Elaine can provide you guys some information on Maine communities that have gone down this road, and I would encourage some reach out, talk to them, see what it looks like. If you want to go with Spectrum because they're going to promise to build out some things and that's what works for your town, that's great. But I wouldn't do it under a bulk purchase. I just don't think it's good for your customers, your constituents, or yourselves.
Mhm.
I think it's important for this committee to remember that regardless if one person signs up for Spectrum or the entire community signs up, every single household signs up for Spectrum, the town is responsible for the billing and the collection thereof. And you even heard Spectrum say, we suggest tacking it on to tax bills or just billing people directly. So now any community that does this becomes Spectrum's bookkeeping department, basically, and collection department. So it's just an SEEC. I am, again, agnostic. Whatever it is the community decides to do, I am here to help you do it, no matter what you decide to do. But I will say I'm with Chris on bulk rate.
And
So
I want to copy this recording because I'm going to hand it out to every landlord that I know and every building owner and tell them that Spectrum will build the building next to you for free under that same bulk
I
purchase agreement. I'd love
know.
to see that one in action.
Yes, I know.
I do got to go. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks a lot,
Chris.
Chris.
See you later,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, guys, what do you think?
I thought it was interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
It is very interesting, but it doesn't feel right. That bulk rate just seems too underhanded or just, I don't know. I feel like the $35, if there's houses that couldn't be reached till 2025, does that $35 have to be paid on that house when they don't even have access and won't until for a couple years maybe?
And I would just weigh in too that, if they can make this work now, why didn't they make it work then?
Yeah, sure.
This technology has been out there for 30 years. They've been making an awful lot of money off of cable subscribers here for many years. And all of a sudden now they can do it for 37 or 38 bucks a person. It just, doesn't rhyme there.
It's almost offensive to all the
Well,
people paying,
yeah, it is something to consider that, for example, every household, not household, every available location in Perry would be billed at that $35 or $37 a month, whether they take it or not. So if Ray decides to go with Starlink, he's still going to have to, or the town is going to have to pay that $35 or $37 a month. And on top of that, So Ray will pay that on his taxes or whatever, or the town will, whatever, and then Ray is still gonna have to pay Starlink.
Right.
I just want you guys to understand what that bulk rate means. So it's disconcerting, that you become billing and collection and everybody, no matter what, if it's a vacant house, I mean, falling down house, it's still, and nobody could possibly live in it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
So that's
It's-
$35 a month. I thought it was an annual fee.
Oh,
Oh,
heavens,
no.
no.
Oh, no.
Heavens no. So when
That,
I
yeah.
did the calculation earlier, Ray and I were chatting, you know, an email, that, or by email, that it's no. So for example, what I told Ray is that $35 a month just for the households, just for the households, it would be like, ooh, what was it, $11,000, $12,000 a month,
Yep.
as opposed to a build out that may involve, and Ray, I think you said you were looking at possibly $700,000, and at a 3% municipal rate over 20 years was less than $4,000 a month.
So is this bulk rate for other ISPs too, or just Spectrum? Like
Oh, that's what Spectrum's doing.
It's just them.
just Spectrum doing that? Okay.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And I don't think it's a package number either. If you wanted to add TV or whatever, I think it'd cost you more. Telephone.
So it's just something else to think about. You guys as a committee can always invite them back, send them emails. Again, I am only here to help you to support whatever it is you decide to do. But I do have to say that I concur with Chris, that the bulk rate is a scary proposition. It is.
My,
It sounds scary, yeah, just to try to get someone to do, hire someone to do the billing and the collections and yeah, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and you heard Spectrum say, and it was recorded, and I will send it out. You did hear them. You could do it through property taxes. So
Right.
now you're globbing this on to people's property taxes. And so if they choose not to take Spectrum and they decide to say stick with Starlink or Consolidated, now they're doubling up on bills.
Yeah.
They're paying that
Nice.
30. Go ahead.
And
Sorry.
not that small towns ever do this, but imagine there'll be people who live in Perry wouldn't be very happy about signing on to an agreement like that.
I was just gonna say,
Regardless of what was going to happen. There, I know in Robbinston where that took place, there was a lot of dissatisfaction amongst the citizens there because they didn't have any input.
Yeah.
I have family in Robbinston and they
Yeah.
don't have any idea. I mean, they will after this meeting, but they're not expecting a $35 a month bill. Whether they utilize Spectrum or not. I don't think there's many of the population that realizes the situation they're in.
Well, it depends on, I will say, whether or not, I will say, I have no idea as to whether or not Robbinston signed on for a bulk service agreement. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know.
They did, Elaine.
They did, okay. Okay. I did hear something similar. So 15 years is what I heard, 15-year agreement
Oh,
yeah,
my.
at $35 a month for every single household, whether they take it or not. So that's what I heard. I don't know it for a fact, but okay. So, yeah.
I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that the community of Perry would vote for something like this if they knew the truth.
Well, I think that's the important part, is that's why you're doing your due diligence, is to hear what everybody's offering. I did notice, or I was listening, and Dan, correct me, please, if I'm wrong. that Spectrum was willing to contribute like $6,000 or something like that uh, for however many households.
Three
Well, that's
houses.
not
For a new build, yes.
for a new build, and that's not going to do it.
No,
I'll give you an example. They came out and did a survey. And at that time, it was only $3,000 towards the project, and they wanted me to contribute or pay the additional 55,000.
Holy cats! All right. So it's just something to consider. That's why you're doing your due diligence and why you're reaching out to everybody and saying, hey, listen, what are you offering? So you can weigh all your options. And again, I'm here to support whatever the town decides to do.
And I
Thank
will
you.
weigh in something too that I'm seeing with you guys, which I've seen with a lot of towns that make sense, is you're very transparent. You want to be really transparent with the whole town, let everybody know what's going on, so there's no secrets in a corner. That's small towns in Maine, across the country. I think people just really, they want to be in the know, especially when you're dealing with what happens in their lives.
I am pretty sure that whatever happens, whatever the committee decides, with the select board, it has to be a town meeting anyway, and they have to approve any decision.
I agree. Well,
I
think
agree as well.
it behooves us to make the biggest effort we possibly can to reach everybody.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
if we have to do a bulk mailing, that's what we have to do.
I absolutely agree. And so for the purposes of a town meeting, I can send to you what Lubec did. And Lubec just at town meeting, they did just an overarching, just allow the committee to apply for grants, and that the town was, if those were granted, that the town would bond or borrow money to match. I can send you that. And Lubec had no problem getting that passed. Now, they did not get the grant, unfortunately, but so that did pass. And so I can send you that language if it helps at all. But you guys are still, you've got what is it Axiom next week, or
I think Consolidate is next week.
okay.
Then
Yep.
Axiom.
And then Axiom, and then I think your last might be Trail Runner because it does have a presence
Right.
in Perry. So we invited them because of that. So yeah, but that's okay.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for all that you are doing. I know we all feel that way, but you're helping out so much. So
Oh, it's my pleasure, and it's awesome to work with Chris, Wade, and Dan. It really is. So it's what we really want is everybody connected to the best they can get for the least amount of money, right, Dan?
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I wanted to thank you, Elaine, for pointing out how little I know. Thank
Oh,
you.
stop. Oh, stop.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you guys.
hey, there's a little fun fact. When I'm doing my dishes, I can actually see the front of her house. So Elaine, if you're ever like at the front of your house in the evenings, just wave to me.
I would love to, but now here's a fun fact is that on July 5th, I was helping to take down July 4th flags and fell and shattered my ankle.
That's when you did it. Oh.
Yeah. And so I spent almost 5 months in a wheelchair. Fun fact, really not fun fact, I have more metal in my leg than I have bones. And so when I'm able to step outside and wave to you, Tina, I certainly will.
Oh my goodness. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, it's
Maybe.
getting there. It's getting
Yeah.
there. But so
Well,
at any rate.
I have one quick question, then I'm done. The high level design quote that we had, was there any decimal points put in the wrong area? Because I come up with 2.5 4 mil or something.
2.8 million.
Yep, yep. And so Ray asked that question to me earlier. And that's a great question. So Dan, for Dan's information, because I don't know if he knows anything about this, that Chris Waite was able to secure excuse me, from Pioneer Broadband, what a build out in Perry, Pleasant Point, and Eastport, what it would look like financially. I'm guessing, assuming a DBU model. And so Perry's was very high, and Eastport's is less, and Pleasant Point is way less than that. And as I explained to Ray, when he asked, he was a little, and rightfully so, that Perry is enormous compared to Eastport and Pleasant Point. Eastport's about 3 square miles. Pleasant Point is about 0.6 square, just over a half mile, square miles. Perry, I believe, is, oh my goodness, what did I tell you, Ray?
Oh, it was more than 50, wasn't it?
Yeah, I want to say 60 something square miles.
Yeah.
Eastport, so let's start with the smallest. Pleasant Point is very, very dense housing. And Tina, you live in Eastport, and you know how dense the housing is here. And when you get to Perry, you start looking at houses farther apart and way bigger geography. So that is going to cost money. It is, which explains why Perry is higher than the other two.
Was the
So-
2.8 million all 3 towns?
No, let
No.
me pull.
No, it's just us, I think.
All I
It's
sent
just
to,
Perry- it's just Perry, yeah.
yeah, it was just Perry. That's what I sent. Was I sent Perry's. So
About 5,000 per household.
How much per household? 5,000?
Yep.
so
Not as
whether
awesome.
so Dan, you can, ruminate on that, but and Dan, I just got them from Chris this afternoon, so I will forward them to you.
Okay, thanks.
All 3, yeah, and you can take a look. So but Pleasant Point was significantly less than Eastport, and Eastport was significantly less than Perry. But when you look at half square mile versus 3 square miles versus like 60 square miles, that might be, but I will send it to Dan, and Dan is seriously neutral on this, and he'll take a look at it and provide feedback.
Yep, will do. I think just so you know, the numbers can be scary, obviously.
Yes.
Money usually is, but the MCA bunch, if you proceed with whatever process you're going to go with, you want to, I think I've said this earlier, you want to shoot for the moon when it's for how much funding you're looking to get out of the MCA, because they're putting significant dollars out there. They gave $8 million to Consolidated to do the Greater East Grand area. They gave them another 8 million for another area in Maine. So there's big numbers. Don't be afraid of them.
Well, my guess is that it's about 6 million for the 3 communities.
Wait, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was getting ready to send Danny this.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. Let me see here. Let me just forward it to Danny. Dan's coming your way. And
Thank you.
oh yeah, nothing fancy there, just coming. Okay, let me pull up my screen here. Let me share my screen. All right. So here's Perry's. Actually, this is not helpful. Hold on one second, guys. I have them in download. Oh, So, no, there was a huge difference. Let me just, hold on. I'm not sure. Here we go. All right. Hopefully this will work. I may have to. Here we go. All right. Perry here, sorry, it's not very big, sorry. Is call it 2.8 mil. It's every screw, every bolt, everything.
Yep.
Okay, so hold on one second. And then I'm gonna go back. Please let me know if you can't, you probably can't see this. Hold on, let me stop sharing. And let me download that. Sorry, guys. I should have had that ready. All right, now, okay. So, and for Danny too. I hear. Here's Pleasant Point. Is sorry, it's not very big. Call it $551,000. Bearing in mind they're half square mile. So, hold on, let me stop sharing. And then I will pull up esports, which is, well, uglier, way uglier than Pleasant Point, but not as. Hold on one second. Where'd esport go? Hold on one second. What I do with it? There we go. Sorry, guys. Okay. There we go. Esports call it 1.5 mil.
That's about 5.
So,
We're the elephant in the room.
so you can almost see where, and I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just presenting the information. But logistically, if Pleasant Point is just over a half square mile, and Eastport is 3 square miles, and Perry is like 60 plus square miles, you can kind of see where that increase. Pleasant Point is seriously condensed, dense housing. Eastport is very dense, and Perry is more spread apart. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying I can that's the best I've got for you. Dan, do you have anything?
I'm just looking over the numbers right now, Elaine. I'd
Yeah,
like to look
okay.
at this closer and then I'll weigh in with you guys once I've really
All
given
right.
a look-see.
Yep. So beforehand I just sent that to Danny. So
I have a question, Elaine.
yeah.
Pleasant Point just received a $500,000 grant. So theoretically, all you have to come up with is another 51,000. But does it in that $500,000 grant and the numbers that Tim provided, that's actually getting a fiber optic signal to Pleasant Point. And if that's happening, would it drive the cost down for Perry to basically take advantage of the fact that that fiber optic signal is coming through Perry, that we could tap into it?
Just John, just to weigh in there, I was talking with Chris on that grant for Pleasant Point. They can't use that money for infrastructure. It's for digital equity. There's a bunch of other stuff in there that I guess they can't use it as a network build.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I believe it's the federal rules around it. Chris knows it in far more detail than I do, but because I made that request to him, I thought, wow, that's going to knock down their costs. And he told me that no, they can't use it for that. But we can ask him to weigh in more specifically on that.
Okay.
And just saying that Chris is happy to help just as much as Dan is. no matter what, we want people connected. And Chris and Danny and I work together a lot. So whatever a community chooses, but I have to step away for 1 minute, just 1 minute.
Well, we may have exhausted ourselves already anyway. I'm hungry.
There is an overload. There is an overload moment. Maybe, I think Glenn's about to have a beer.
It's just overwhelming, the challenges. I mean, reaching out to the community and then the funding and grant writing and the technical aspect of it.
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
It's quite challenging.
Well, it's because of all this federal money that's coming. There's so many horses coming to the trough. And as you saw that last round, they had nearly $60 million in requests.
Yep.
You know, so there's an awful lot of scrambling because communities like Perry, you know, back to the spectrum presentation, that they've been ignored for centuries. Nobody pays attention to Perry or Eastport or Pembroke or Cooper or any of those little towns.
Yeah.
So it's going to be you guys are trying to do it on your own. There's a lot of work to it. You got to be really congratulated for sticking with it, because I know it isn't easy.
We haven't been at it that long, so no congratulations yet.
Well, I've been doing this since, let me see, it would have been about 2001.
Hmm.
Started being in the state of Maine talking. I started with Governor Baldacci. I've been with every one of them since, asking for why we don't have fiber to the home networks. This is back 25 years ago. This could have been done. If you were to look, when I was the IT manager up at the mill, I had, because Spectrum it was Time Warner at that point, they wanted our business. So as I'm sitting talking to one of the salesmen, I said, I want to see your fiber map. And he said, well, they're proprietary, but I'll let you take a look at it. And Spectrum has got fiber all over the state of Maine, as does Consolidated.
Mhm.
They've got huge backbones, huge rings of fiber, that what they've never done is put that last mile to your house. And even now, when you listen to that presentation, they're still talking about hanging onto that stupid copper coax cable that has been the problem all along. The internet is, the backbone is fiber, the middle mile's fiber. It's just that last piece. So to get it, and if you guys can pull this off, regardless of who you go with, you get that fiber connection, you can all rest probably for the rest of your lives and not have to go back and visit this again. That's my goal.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to Melinda talk about how the technology, who can predict the technology. She was almost making an excuse for why they were utilizing a hybrid model with coaxial rather than committing just to fiber optics.
You know, had I was going to weigh in there, which I didn't, because I stayed quiet, I would have asked Melinda. I said, well, if you're going with that model, why do you bother having fiber as your backbone? Why do you have it as your middle mile? You know, why, if it's not the greatest thing out there, but it's not going to take care of your needs for the next 50 years, why are you bothering to build it there? But anyway.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
And I have to apologize, but my wife's coming home and I got to get dinner going. So,
Okay.
Geez,
Thank
Dan,
you.
what's
good
Thank
talking to
you
you
much,
guys.
Dan.
If you have any questions,
Thank you.
you know how to get a hold of me.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, yeah,